Our inspiring role model of today is Liz Manella. Liz, you lead with serious clout. You unlock the resources that campaigns and organizations need in order to reach voters, pass legislation, and win elections. You're a very ambitious and successful fundraiser, activist, connector, galvanizer, getting people to support the Democratic Party in the United States. You campaign against assault weapons and I think most of what's happening right now under Trump 2.0. You champion progressive candidates in Illinois and throughout your country. You lead with improving the online message of the left, which is a little bit why we are where we are. And you're the founder of connectforward.org, which is a media company of liberal voices. You're also the host of the Demfluence Podcast and the deputy finance chair of the Democrats. I am super excited to speak to you. You work at the intersection of politics and social media, which is super important. So talk to us a little bit about that work that you're doing every day in order for democracy to prevail.
Yes. So I think it's something that oftentimes is not getting enough attention on the left for being the progressive side of our politics here. We often are the most conservative when it comes to adopting new strategies. We've seen this throughout history. So conservatives beat us to talk radio, to cable news, and they beat us to messaging and organizing online. And we are still very much playing catch up. We are starting to make strides, and it's clear it's something that people are thinking about. But I will say that for the most part, I don't think that the political establishment on the left has gotten the memo that the world takes place online. I often, when I meet with candidates or organizations or people who have the ability to change things in our political system, I kind of start my pitch by saying there are two realities. There's like the actual world and what is happening in it. And then there's how that all plays online and how people are talking about it, thinking about it, conversing about it online in social media spaces. And the latter is sort of the only thing that matters. It passes laws, it wins elections, and everything that happens in the real world is sort of like in spite or as an effect of what's going on online. And I think for some people who didn't grow up online, who definitely like cut their teeth and made their career operating in the real world, that's a tough pill to swallow. Like, what do you mean? There's just an alternate reality that is
Mm.
dominating culture, politics, and the way people think, receive information, and form opinions. But that's the truth. There's just a statistic that there are people who spend more time with Joe Rogan than their own family members. We
Mm.
just live in like a very online world. People spend more time in their cars looking at their phone than they do out in their community, even with their own friends and family. And I think we need to yes, it's terrible. Like I wish this weren't the way. Like my kids won't get a smartphone until they can buy it themselves. They won't have social media until I hope college. I hope they will elect to do that. But as long as I have the ability to like enforce rules at until like 16, 18, I won't allow them into this space. It's terrible. It's toxic, particularly for children. We should find ways to legislate around some of the dangers of this online space.
Yeah.
However, here we are. And if we want the ability to legislate around it, we have to win back the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And the way to do that is through people's phones.
Yeah. Liz, so something very exciting has been happening in the past week, right? Trends are
Yeah.
changing. Talk to us about that before we get into your journey and your pivotal
Yeah.
points.
So There has been, it seems like every week of news is sort of breakneck, but in particular, the last week, 2 weeks, ICE, our Immigration Customs Enforcement, and our Border Patrol agents who have been patrolling Minneapolis, kidnapping people, and just terrorizing the community and people who are standing up and protesting against them.
Mm,
They've murdered two people in
yeah.
cold blood on the streets. They are United States citizens. They were people that were working to protect others from this government inflicted terror.
Mm,
Um, so those two things happened in rapid succession. There was also a child that was taken. His name is Liam, and he was taken as he was wearing like a knit bunny hat.
yeah.
And that image made its way around the world and around our country of a 5-year-old child with his backpack and his bunny hat on, and an ICE agent's hand on his backpack. And those things all happening in rapid succession with the release of the latest Epstein files has really broken a lot of people. The murders of American citizens were shocking. However, I don't think there was a mother in this country, no matter what side of the political aisle she sits on, saw that picture of Liam and didn't think, get your hands off that child. And that moved a lot of people. And it has simply been a bridge too far for so many. I went to a conservative college. I have friends who live in wealthy suburban conservative places who interact with women my age. We call them the Katies, who are sort of the apolitical, economically secure, um, millennial mom woman. And those women have started expressing this week that either their silence is no longer possible, and or their vote and allegiance to this party is deeply wrong. They were tricked, they were lied to, and they're ready to sort of admit that. Every day I have people sending me messages that their 3-time Trump voting parent has called them and said, I can't believe this. I was so wrong. Especially when it comes to the Epstein files, this was a big conspiracy. This was a huge thing that really pulled a lot of people down this right-wing rabbit hole, that there was this cabal of pedophilic, you know, Democrats and world leaders and people that controlled the world that were abusing and eating. Like it is,
Yeah.
if you go down the Pizzagate rabbit hole that started in 2016,
Yeah.
um, the allegations are, I mean, it feels like you're reading a very weird, science fiction novel or something like that. But as these FBI documents and these Epstein files have started to be released, they're finding through lines from these conspiracies that they were talking about in 2016 that they blamed on the Democrats, and
Mm,
they're connecting them to Trump and the Republicans. And
yeah.
people are and somewhere in the middle or not lies the truth of Jeffrey Epstein connections to world leaders,
Yeah.
abuse of young girls. A lot of times they're referred to as young women. They're not women, they're girls.
Yeah.
But all of this but what we do know and what we can say with certainty is that the very things that they were riling up this base about were true of them, and so that has created just a complete like crisis of conscience
Mm,
in so many people. And we see them posting online, we see them reaching out and talking to friends and family and saying this is too much, and they feel like now they don't know where to go. So
yeah.
we need to give them a place to go, and we need to not say no, no, too little, too late, or because you don't agree with all the 50 things on our perfect liberal litmus test, you're not welcome here. You are welcome here. You are welcome to organize and vote for Democrats. I'm not saying we are going to move our party platform further to the right to accommodate you, but you are welcome to vote for us, to work for us, to organize for us, and to talk to other people like you who might be feeling like I got, and now I need to process this with someone.
Liz, it's absolutely terrifying to watch what is unfolding in America. But it's not just an American problem, it's a worldwide problem. The far right is really gaining strength all over the world. And it's almost as if we have to be really doubling down and watching the US so it doesn't happen elsewhere in the world, which is why it's so important to talk to the people like yourself and to see you in action and see you really fired up to try and turn this around because it's terrifying when people, children get abducted, people get executed in broad daylight on as American citizens in the streets. And so I'm wondering what do you feel are sort of your main learnings? I think a main learning that is now what you just said is keep the door open, keep the conversations going, make as many connections as possible, because that's exactly what will help us. Do you feel the system is broken to the point where we need to come up with completely new parties and new systems? Or do you feel there is a middle way, which is that we can get enough people onto the Democratic side in order for this to change?
I think we kind of need to fundamentally redefine our party and certainly talk about what we are for
Mm,
and express that in a way that brings in as many people as possible. I spent last night with the chair of the DNC, Ken Martin, who he's from Minneapolis.
mm,
He is sort of cut his teeth in this state that is a great example of everything that is a direct argument to Trump's ideas, and that that he can take a rural, suburban, more middle of the country, not coastal elite place,
mm,
and turn the people against each other and drag the conversation and the voters further to the right. Minnesota should be the perfect place to do that, but he can't. And that is because of really the incredible local small community organizing that they do. They just have an incredible civically minded spirit there.
mm,
So Ken Martin, who's running the DNC, he was the Minnesota state chair. All the every state has a Democratic Party, a state Democratic Party that is funded by the larger DNC, and those state parties are responsible for facilitating on the ground organizing, having infrastructure for Democrats to run for every seat, finding people to run for every seat, being a way to bring in volunteers and make people feel like if you're a Democrat here in this state, in this county, you have a home and you have a place to find out about candidates, work, volunteer, and meet other Democrats as well. Minnesota is incredibly skilled at doing that. And
mm,
it's not glamorous and it's not big. And oftentimes hear a lot of people say, well, we just need a Joe Rogan of the left. We need this like incredible candidate, like this Obama-like figure to parachute in and unite everyone. I really want that. I really do. It would be a lot easier. But
yeah.
what we're going to need to do is, to quote Shannon Watts, who's an incredible gun violence prevention activist, we're going to need to do the unglamorous heavy lifting of grassroots activism. And this just means every community organizing, putting a person up for every single seat, finding ways to bring people together, because I think people respond so much more when the party, to me, the Democratic Party is my, 20 neighbors who sit on the New Trier Democrats board with me. That's my township. And we meet every 2 weeks and we talk about our ideas and our disagreements and where we think the party needs to go and what we think about the different candidates running. Like that's the Democratic Party to me, not this amorphous thing that sits in DC. So we need
Mm,
to bring it down to the local level, and we need people, if you want to make change, to get involved at the local level. And Ken has a plan and a vision of how to do that, and it's small and it's not grand, and it's kind of boring to listen to as he breaks it down, when he talks about kind of organizing everywhere so you can organizing everywhere so you can win anywhere. And Minnesota is just a great example of that. And knowing that he has that experience, I have a lot of confidence in our party. We also have a lot of problems in our own party. We're very, very divided.
Mm.
And there have been really intentional things that have happened in the world in order to do that. October 7th is a one piece of a centuries long conflict. However, October 7th happening exactly 1 year before our election is quite intentional. It absolutely divided the Democratic Party and continues to do so to this day. Um, Obviously, we have a an allyship with Israel, and we provide them aid. And the like to just summarize it very quickly, I believe the Islamic Republic of Iran and our foreign adversaries seed our algorithm with misinformation,
Yeah,
inflammatory, and insane images. Yes, I believe what happened, the response from Israel, the worst humanitarian crisis ever. They killed tens of thousands of people. That government, the Netanyahu regime, the man's a war criminal. But when you look at our algorithms and what everyday people, like 25-year-old white suburban female Democrats, see on their algorithm day in and day out about Israel and about our relationship and how evil they are, and it's intentional. It's
yeah,
intentional. And so many of those people stayed home in 2024. There was a huge movement, especially in swing states like Michigan, to just have people not vote for Kamala Harris because she had a more, I mean, she had, if it was up to Trump, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if there's Gaza, if there's Palestine. He doesn't care about anybody else's life.
yeah,
I believe Kamala Harris were president, there would be less loss of life in Gaza. There would be more checks put on Netanyahu. Trump is a lot more friendly to him. However, we just have this faction of our party that's like, no, like we don't, we allow perfect to be the enemy of good. Kamala Harris isn't perfect on Israel. She doesn't say everything we want her to say. So we're not going to vote for her. Okay, well then
mm,
you're going to get the guy who wants to wipe Gaza off the map and build
yeah,
a hotel. He
yeah,
said that, right? He doesn't care about you or any human. And they just cannot think rationally because they have been bombarded with content online
yeah.
to change the way they think. So we have a lot of problems in our party. I think the far left, and their inability to think critically about what they see online is a big part of that. I have just as many arguments with people in my life that are leftist as I do MAGA. And I
Wow.
think that says a lot. And they both think that I'm crazy and wrong and tell me it all the time.
Liz, if I think about the state of America and the state of the world, really what we've lost is our center middle, right?
Yeah.
You are a major fundraiser for the Democratic Party and for the center middle. Talk to us about the insights you have around galvanizing people, getting them to spend money, to give money to something that you deeply believe in. Because a lot of the things and a lot of the things that we're asked now as citizens of the world is to literally bring people together, to raise enough money, to be able to spread the messages that we need to spread, which you very eloquently said earlier are being spent by people all over, right? We have the far right of America spreading lies about England and how unsafe it is, etc., etc. I mean, I live in London, it's perfectly safe. So all of these
They say the
things
same thing
are
about
lies. And
Chicago, and yeah.
well, exactly. So I just think we need to bring communities together and we need to raise enough money in order to be able to hold against this power of money and influence that is spreading a world that we don't want to be a part of.
Yes. I often say, I know you have Real Housewives, right? The Bravo show.
Of course.
Okay, so I often say my Real Housewives tagline would be, my biggest dream is campaign finance reform. Like I want money out of
Mm,
politics. But
mm.
until then, this politics is a game of money, and
Game.
I play it better than anyone. So, my background is in development and sales. I'm just good at asking people for money and making a case as to why they should spend. I found relatively recently in the last 5 years, that the amalgam of my passion and knowledge and interest in our political system and my ability to get people to invest in the things that they believe in has made me a successful fundraiser. I think we do need money out of politics. We can very easily legislate around, we had a decision here called Citizens United, which basically said that a corporation is allowed to have money is speech and a corporation is a person. So we have the First Amendment, which is you're allowed to express yourself in freedom of speech. And they have twisted that to say, well, a corporation spending money on an election is speech, is free speech.
Mm,
So you can't
mm,
keep them from doing that because the corporation, are expressing themselves through their money. It's pretty wild, but in America, we
it's
care
bonkers.
about literally nothing except money. I would say that across the aisle. It's why we have a billionaire who's president. It's why I think our next presidential nominee will also be a billionaire. We think money is the coolest here, and everybody sets up their life and value system around achieving more of it. It's the most American thing about us. Everyone's like, freedom is what America's about. It's money. So obviously, we do everything in our power to protect money and the engines that drive money, like corporations. And in the last 10 years since Citizens United, it has systematically broken our political system. We do not pass any laws because anybody can spend money to ensure that you don't.
Yeah.
Any law or policy that's passed is going to impact someone somewhere in a negative way, right? It's going to stop
Mm,
something from happening or start something from happening. And if a corporation or a lobby has enough money, they can work very hard to stop that. I saw this as I was advocating for gun violence prevention legislation. I mean, it's absolutely insane that in the year, this was 2022, that a blue state with a blue governor and two chambers led by Democrats for years didn't have an assault weapons ban. These are weapons of war. Like
yeah.
it's absolutely insane that it took people being mowed down at a 4th of July parade. What's more fucking
Mm,
American than that?
mm,
In order for Democratic politicians to have the courage to stand up to the NRA and to the gun lobby.
yeah.
So it's a huge, huge problem, and I want to fix it. But until that time, we have to play the game.
Totally.
There is so much money pouring into the right, and we have to tell people who have made their fortune on this country being a democracy, that they have to invest back in that. And I think about that as a person who, my grandmother lived in poverty. She broke bones her whole life because she didn't have enough to eat. She was able to go to Colombia on the GI Bill. They were able to buy a house on Long Island because they had the federal government gave veterans basically a down payment for their home. And it allowed my family to build wealth and give me the things that I have today. And I look at every dollar that I spend on a Democratic candidate, every moment that I'm doing this for free, which is most of the moments that I'm
Mm,
doing this, I look at that as my investment back, that I would not have any of the things that I have if not for Democratic policies. It pulled my grandmother from living in poverty to being able to send 5 children to private school in one generation. Like that's the American dream. And
yeah.
this is something to bring it back to Ken Martin that he says often is that Democrats, if we were to summarize what we are about in one sentence, it is that no matter who you are, where you were born, or where you live, you should have the opportunity to not just get by, but get ahead. And like, it's just that simple. And Republicans always want to drag this into like a culture war conversation about trans people and immigrants, and it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault. Your life isn't bad because of trans people and immigrants. Your life is bad because of billionaires and corporations and Citizens United. And every person should have the opportunity to thrive here. We are a giant country with a lot of land and space. We have incredibly robust financial systems. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Every person who lives here or wants to live here and generate in that economy should have the opportunity to do so. There is enough to go around. Everybody has a very scarcity mindset. It
Yeah.
should be the opposite. More is more. More people working in this economy, more immigration, more schooling. More is more. And I think that if we were to all just kind of like focus on that central message of economic abundance and opportunity, it would unite our party. And I also think the ability to kind of like spread that message worldwide. I think that globalization is obviously the answer to so many problems. I remember in 10th grade learning about the law of the Golden Arches, which is that two countries, this is probably not true
Mm,
anymore, two countries that each have a McDonald's in them had never gone to war
yeah.
because globalization and economic interest quells conflict because they're kind of, they're thinking about their bottom line, but oftentimes the bottom line is people there with money to spend in their McDonald's. So I think that there is like a vision of the future in which economic prosperity and peace and like political harmony are all working hand in hand as they should. I think we just let too many people with very weird ideas um,
Rule.
steer the ship for too
Yeah,
long.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Listen, you said so many important things. Of course, this is an American issue, but it's a worldwide issue. And the vacuum that's created by America turning into the America of Trump 2.0, which is a fiasco, is not good for anybody, not good for Americans. For most Americans, it's not good for the world. It's created a vacuum that at the moment is creating real instability. It is. I'm German. I grew up with America being this incredible country of real freedom and real opportunity that helped us in, at times of need. If we look at history, we know that extreme policies are just not going to work. And we've tried them from the left and the right, and they have never worked. So sometimes it's flabbergasting how in the world we ended up at this point. So, Liz, what are your messages to the American people, but really people all over the world who are fighting against the far right? What is it that we can each do today?
I think getting into community in real life. I think the internet is an incredible tool for digital organizing and to gather people in like-minded groups. But wherever you are, you can put out to anybody you know, whether it's parents that you're connected to, whether it's on your own social media. I want to have a coffee and talk about the state of the world. It will make you feel better, one, to talk to like-minded people or even not like-minded people, but to have a real conversation in person. And then I often find, particularly women, which is typically who listens to these things, we have this incredible ability when we gather in groups to get things done. Throughout history, it has always been women organizing in groups and driving social change. We saw that in the civil rights movement. We saw that in women's suffrage. We've seen that in times of war and unrest. It's the women, and so do that at a large scale. Do that at a small scale. And I think keep the conversation going with people in your life that think differently. I've talked about this a lot. I feel like in the last couple of weeks, I've had a real awakening that in 2016, when we had friends or family that were supporting Trump or not anti-Trump. I had a lot of
Mm,
friends who I asked, who are you voting for? And they wouldn't tell me.
mm,
And so I assumed it was Trump. And I then said, well, if you are voting for Trump, you are a racist, a misogynist, and just like an evil person who only cares about your own tax dollars, which also, by the way, none of these people, I have a video where I wrote a song called You're Not Rich Enough to Vote for Trump. His tax policies and Republican tax policies don't benefit you unless
no.
you are like the 100 families that I call it like the ruling class. There are like 100 people in this country that rule the country because they have so
Yeah.
much generational wealth.
Yeah.
If your like dad was a CEO of a Fortune 500, you are not in that. you are not in that ruling class. Like,
Mm,
I'm sure you know, have a nice boat, but you are not in that ruling class. And you don't need to be voting for Trump for tax policies. You need to be voting for someone who's going to keep the market stable, and that's not Trump. But all that to say, I kind of cast a lot of people aside and said that, you know, you are an immoral person if you're going to support this president.
mm.
And I don't think we considered enough other people's information diets
Yeah,
and or upbringing. And then they felt very much like put in a box, and that
yeah,
they had to double and triple down
mm,
because I'm not going to vote for a Democrat.
totally.
So I just think that we need to think more strategically in the way we talk to people. Like, the point isn't to be right and to feel good and to feel morally superior.
Yeah,
We've been doing that for 10 years. Like, yeah, I definitely feel morally superior to a lot of people. I get to go on podcasts and the news and the internet and talk about how awful Trump is and how awful his supporters are. It's felt great for me. But you know what hasn't felt great? Losing,
yeah,
watching people die and disappear because Republicans control every branch of government now in this country. So, like, I've had a great time snarking on the internet. That was fun, got the t-shirt, but like, I haven't accomplished any of my goals.
yeah,
So we all need to have a reset. We like,
yeah,
the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I am I'm most guilty of this. I love to dunk on people. I love to make this about, you know, who is like a better person. And at the end of the day, they were misguided, they
yeah,
were lied to.
yeah,
They also came from a place of, you know, this is who I've been and what I've believed for
mm,
my entire life. I've
mm,
believed in fiscal conservatism. I've believed that the Democrats are trying to pull us too far. Like, there's a
mm,
lot to unpack and deprogram
yeah,
with people. So, and that happens in everyday conversations. And if you cut that off, those conversations don't happen. And right now, I could probably name like 10 people that I'm sure are horrified by what's happening and are sort of Democrat curious. And I would be the perfect person to talk to because
yeah,
I know a lot. I also could plug them in. Like, I went to school in Pennsylvania, which is a really important state in our upcoming midterms because
mm,
there are like 4 House seats that we could flip.
yeah,
Like, it's wherever you live in Pennsylvania, you could be doing something every single day to change the outcome of this country. Like, Pennsylvania is such an important state for us, particularly when it comes to the House. And I know all these people that live in Pennsylvania, and I could be like, yeah, it's okay, you know, that you maybe voted for Trump once or twice, or maybe you've been quiet, or maybe you've been apolitical and you're upset now. I've got the perfect go tomorrow to this congressional office and knock doors, you know, write post, whatever it is, plug in, find your community there, find other kind of moderate Democrats. But I don't have the ability to do that because they don't talk to me anymore because I've been calling them racist, misogynist, like basket of deplorables to their face and on the internet for 10 years. Who would want to talk to me? So my like marching orders to people is like, take a lesson from that. I often quote James Carville, who said, "Do you want to run your mouth or do you want to run the country?"
yeah,
If we want to get back to running this country and enact the policies that are going to keep people safe and create a better world for my daughters, like, I gotta stop just doing what feels good.
yeah. Liz, you said something super important, pragmatism, right? You are very
Yeah.
pragmatically taking stock, taking accountability for the ways you've been doing things. You're very humbly saying maybe that wasn't the best way, and maybe we've done this for too long because we sit on this moral high horse and it hasn't
Yeah.
brought us anything, right? We've lost, and
Right.
here we are. So, talk to us a little bit about those pivotal points that you feel in your journey that led you to where you are today, where you are really building bridges and you're trying to teach a lot of people how to do that.
Yeah, I would absolutely say, you know, the result of the 24 election was it was not shocking. There were many times throughout the fall where I knew that we were missing the mark and we were
Yeah,
missing both how we were messaging to people and the way we were messaging to people. So I at the beginning of Kamala Harris's campaign, I organized something called White Women Answer the Call, and we had over 200,000 women join, and we talked about this moment of, how can we as white women best show up and support Black women who have been doing this work for decades, and, understand our biases and not center ourselves. And we kind of had this like very high level, very liberal arts college, like workshop on what that would look like and how we can like be the best white ladies in this moment. And everybody who joined it and would be the type of person who would come and sit there for 2 hours and hear all of these speakers loved it and felt like the message was really empowering. But then something also happened that at the time we sort of just brushed off, and now I take a lot of learnings from. It went really viral on like right-wing Twitter. Elon Musk tweeted about it. They clipped a part of one of the speakers who was kind of speaking in like our white lady liberal arts speak of like, we need to not center ourselves, and when a person of color, like just using all these kind of like buzzwords that we all learned in college that we often say to like show and virtue signal. I mean, the speaker is not a virtue signaler at all, but many people, to kind of virtue signal that like I'm a good white lady. I understand post, third wave feminism has to be intersectional, all of these things. And it enraged the right. They took it and they made fun of it. And while I think that it was like a great rallying cry for us, and it really like brought us together, it did not expand the electorate. And we continued on with weekly Women Wednesday organizing calls. And we did succeed in mobilizing more college educated white women. We saw that we moved 5 points to the left in that demographic. And I do believe that the work that myself, Indivisible, Shannon Watts, Women for Harris, I believe that work was directly related to that. That was a big swing, unexpected and sort of unprecedented. But we also saw non-college educated white women move, I think, 7 points to the right.
Right.
So while we were over here like, rah, this is so exciting, we're getting our girl group together, and we were doing like our, dancing to Beyonce and like wearing our t-shirts. And we got a couple more people, to sort of join our sorority over here. We were alienating a huge group of this country. So it was positive in some ways, but, net negative, because overall we moved, as white women, we moved 2 points to the right. So we need to think about in every strategy, the positive is the positive. And it felt great. Like I met Oprah. It was awesome. Everybody who loved us, but we were deeply alienating the middle of the road voter. We also did something called a whisper campaign with Post-its. So we would write on Post-its things like, no one knows your vote but you. And we would put them in women's bathrooms. And we felt that this was a way to kind of like get women who maybe their husbands voted Republican and they're feeling like they want to vote for Kamala Harris. This is a way to like signal to them like it's okay. That also didn't work. Women found that very infantilizing. Even if everything we were told and the data that we looked at as we were developing that campaign was accurate, data is data and ideas are ideas, but you never really know the way things land. And we didn't know that until after the election, but we have to learn the lesson from that. So I took a lot away from that loss. Obviously, we did not message online enough at all. And we really over-indexed on the reproductive argument. We like the line sort of in the Democratic Party was Roe has fallen. Women are upset about that. We did really well in the 22 midterms right after that. And that is going to carry us with women. So the suburban white woman is kind of the like holy grail of our elections. If they swing left, you win. If they swing right, you lose. And we were just kind of like, check, of course they're going to swing our way. They're going to want a Democrat in office so we can restore these protections. Abortion, despite what the right says is a winning issue that the majority of Americans want. However, they just found ways to sort of message around that. The Republicans didn't really talk about it too much
Yeah.
and just kind of let it be like, oh, it's a state issue. You'll be fine. If you want an abortion, you can get an abortion was kind of like the vibe.
Yeah.
They weren't talking about like, oh, we're going to go further. We're going to make this harder. Obviously, we tried to extrapolate all of the ways that this would negatively impact women's health, as a whole. But they were just kind of quiet about it. And they definitely relied on this whole the Make America Healthy movement was really
Mm.
popular. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of infrastructure online, a lot of influencers and people who would often talk about wellness and often talk about the very real problem that our medical system and our healthcare system fails a lot of people. The average mom, their kid gets eczema, they cannot get an appointment with their pediatrician
Mm.
for months, if not weeks, especially if it's a specialist,
Yeah.
and or weeks, if not months. And so they go online and they're like, my kid is hurting and in pain and uncomfortable or has a problem, and they listen to an influencer. They listen to like this kind of pseudoscience, and then they do what they say, and sometimes it actually does work. And then they feel like they have a lot of trust in this person, and so they continue to listen to them. And then when that person says, hey, the best person for our healthcare system is Donald Trump, they believe them because they've developed this trust with them. And so we did not anticipate that. We did not do anything online to combat that information. And we lost all those non-college educated women to the MAHA movement. So we have to think about that going into 26 and 28. And what are the things that are going to resonate with these people, and how can we message to them in a way that doesn't turn them off?
Yeah. Liz, as I'm listening to you, I want to clone you and put you all over America because that's so important. And you've mentioned Shannon Watts, who's a WeCan role model. There is a lot of Amanda Zorowski. There's a lot of amazing women all over the U.S. that are doing incredible work. But you are literally in the firing line because the right has understood that you, white women of America, are really dangerous to them. What do
Yes.
you
Oh, yeah.
say to white women now who are listening to you and thinking we all need to do something, but you're definitely in the firing line?
Yeah, it's been kind of wild that to watch that messaging campaign take shape in the last month or so. I'll start with saying nothing online is accidental. So when you start
Mm,
seeing everybody saying something online, when something is a trend, it is rarely an organic trend. It is
yeah,
seeded very, very specifically and intentionally, and oftentimes it's very well funded. I do this. This is what my organization does. We run messaging campaigns through influencers online, and we see it's effective. We did this in North Carolina. They tried to, steal a Supreme Court seat. So we got a bunch of and no one was talking about it. We got a bunch of influencers in North Carolina to say the same 5 words so that the algorithm would pick it up. And all of a sudden it was everywhere. And the GOP stopped because they wanted to run their little, cheating scheme under the cloak of night. And once people
yeah,
started talking about it, they quit. So online messaging campaigns are extremely successful and powerful. And the latest one is that liberal, they call us awful, affluent, white, female, urban liberal.
yeah.
And they have decided that we are the biggest danger to our republic. And you know what? We are. We are educated and organized and pissed off and able to amass as much power as evil men, and that is really starting to freak them out. That people listen to us and will organize with us, and that we are not tied to like a central idea or group like
Mm,
that. Elon Musk has to be, his main focus is just making as much money for himself as possible, so he
yeah,
has to kind of like fall in line and act as such. But like we don't have that. We have a commitment to like democracy, keeping people safe. Everybody should have healthcare. These are kind of like basic easy things, so we're hard to control. And I think that it's also just kind of like a way to dehumanize us so that when they do
totally.
shoot us in the face, when
Mm,
we're driving a minivan, uh, there is it at least softens the backlash. But I often say that, to other awful women out there who are like, wow, we're now the newest enemy. Um, Wear that like a badge of honor. And we
Mm,
have to keep going because this is something, every 80 to 100 years, democracies experience a stress test. And oftentimes, different democracies around the world have them at the same time. I mean, there have been world wars because of it.
yeah,
And we are definitely at that stress test moment. We are in the eye of the hurricane and we are seeing systems that are not set up for like current modern life breaking,
yeah,
and everything is changing and in many ways has to change. But I often tell people like what a privilege to be living in this time and to be doing something about it, because the people that are working and organizing and standing up in those eye of the hurricane moments, they become the architects of the next phase of democracy.
yeah,
So when I have a mom that's like, this is exhausting. This is scary. Are they going to, people that are organizing, walking children home when ICE is in the neighborhood, are they going to be held accountable as organizing against federal law enforcement?
mhm,
I don't know. Like, maybe that's possible. And so it's a very scary time for a lot of people who didn't imagine their life as, an activist or a freedom fighter or somebody who was going to really like live in danger. Every person that major scholars that talk about fascism and authoritarianism and have taught about this in this country have left, because it's unsafe and they see the writing on the wall. So it's kind of like a scary time, but I just try to remind people like you will be in the digital history books. And just as we look at, the people who fought during civil rights, suffrage, the Revolutionary War. Sorry, guys. That this was a time of great patriotism. This is a time of like great collective character, because it won't just be one person. The story won't be, oh, then this great person ran for president and they saved us all.
yeah,
It won't be an elected official. It won't be a Joe Rogan of the left. It will be everyday people organizing, and they will say across this country, moms and dads and just everyday normal people stood up, organized, got involved, paid attention, and clawed this country back from the brink of defeat of our 250-year-old experiment. There is no other country in the history of the world that for 250 years has had a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, enormous geographically. I think that sometimes people forget that we often compare ourselves to our European peer nations and say, they do this really well in Europe. Why can't we do it? We are so enormous, in
yeah.
so many ways and so geographically diverse. It's not perfect, but it's an incredible experiment. And from the time that we were 5 years old, we've been told what an incredible place this is, what an incredible experiment this is, and how lucky we are to live here. And so it's just, it's the time down and try to save that.
Liz, exactly. Everyone who's listening, the time is now. If it's not you, then who? Everyone is asked to take action. And I think having each other's backs, community is
Yeah.
all that matters. You have to have each other's backs. We have to have your backs. You have to have each other's backs. I was just in Montreal with one of my children to visit a university a week ago, and I stayed in a hotel where I was in the loo downstairs, and a woman in the next cubicle was calling her family. She had obviously had to flee from Minnesota across the
Oh,
border
God.
and was hiding in the bathroom or maybe stayed at the hotel. I don't know. I overheard her conversation and I had to run to the airport, so I couldn't wait for her to finish the phone call. But she must have witnessed one of these terrible incidents and she felt like she had to flee because they were looking for witnesses. These are the times we live in. And this is something that I witnessed a week ago in Canada visiting a university with my 19-year-old daughter. So I just want to say these are not conspiracy theories. These are not conspiracy stories. This is real life. And we need people like you, Liz, and many other people to stand up, to make the voices heard, but also to stay safe, right? There is a lot of terror, and we see things that are being deployed that put people's lives at risk. So you have to
Yeah.
stay safe.
We
Liz,
need people to be smart. We need people to work hard and to fight, but we need to work smarter. And I think that, if you're going to a protest, if you're going to be part of a rapid response group, take the training, talk to a lawyer, understand your rights, understand what counts as impeding federal law enforcement, what doesn't. And there is also this feeling like that there is no rules or laws. They're
yeah,
revoking people's passports. They're messing with people's global entry. If they're caught at a protest,
yeah,
if a ICE agent takes a picture of their face, I'm sure that all of us that talk about this online are on some kind of list.
yeah,
But to that I say they can't put everybody on a list, right? When they start putting
yeah.
Republican voters on a list, that's where the system starts to break. And I just want to kind of give like a final marching call to people that there isn't like one thing that is going to solve this, but what I've tried to do is think about what are my own unique gifts and talents? What am I really good at? And how can I apply that to this moment and to this fight? So instead of asking like, what can you do? Just think of what can only you do, and find a way to do that, to organize people and activate your community.
Liz, I think this is a perfect note to finish. We ran over by so much. I
Oh, sorry.
absolutely
I'm a
had 10
chatter.
million more questions, but I am so thankful for everything that you do and
Thank you.
everything that you are and all the people you galvanize into action.
Thank you. And we really appreciate your support from across the pond. It means so much that, other countries are rooting for us in this moment.